Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
There's a lot of money at stake here.
Billions of dollars at play in the high-stakes state Medicaid dispute.
It sounded good, you know, him putting a new system in.
An elderly man says he was duped, and he's now paying a hefty price.
A national search may include great people from Louisiana or with Louisiana connections.
How LSU says it will find a new president, and if the role could see a change. Hi, everyone. I'm Andre Morrow. Natasha Williams is off tonight. We'll have more on our top stories in a moment on this week's edition of SWI. But first, a look at other news making headlines across our state. The state has reported its third death from vaping and the first this year. The State Department of Health says someone died in Lafayette Parish, but gave no other information. Louisiana saw 35 confirmed cases of lung injury from vaping between August and December of 2019. A plea deal means a lesser charge for the former LSU student and fraternity member convicted in the hazing death of a pledge. 21-year-old Matthew Nakan waived his right to appeal when prosecutors agreed to drop an obstruction of justice charge. Nakan was convicted last July of negligent homicide in the hazing death of 18-year-old Max Groover. Groover had been at LSU only 1 month when he died from alcohol poisoning at a Phi Delta Theta event. Senator John Kennedy this week announced a $1 million FEMA grant to help fund the construction of a flood diversion canal in Livingston Parish. The canal is designed to divert runoff through the upper reaches of Beaver Creek in that parish, with a completion date set for November of 2022. It will be designed to divert about a third of natural Beaver Creek flow into the Amite River during a 100-year flood event. An outside search firm will be used to help screen candidates who could become the state's next superintendent of schools. John White will remain on the job until mid-March. Education board members say the open application process intends to identify 3 to 5 finalists for the job. Following the death of 9 racehorses at the New Orleans Fairgrounds since the start of the season less than 3 months ago, the track has lost its accreditation. The State Racing Commission met this week and heard potential reforms suggested by the track owner. Reforms like restrictions on certain drugs linked to the deaths of some of those 9 horses. The Westwego City Council shocked residents and the rep from a Chinese chemical company at a public hearing this week when they turned down the company's request to build a plant in the West Bank city. City leaders say Wanhao failed to answer questions about potential dangers of the chemical they produce under conditions that could occur during a hurricane. The company told leaders the chemical is safe and environmentally sound, but leaders didn't buy it, and after an hour, one councilman said he had heard enough. Looks like Bayou Country Superfest may have played its last festival. Organizers of the 10-year-old event held on Memorial Day weekend say it's on hiatus until further notice. Last year's event at Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge drew about 50,000 people, compared to 135,000 who attended in 2014. Some of country music's biggest names played it. Governor John Bel Edwards this week released the final report from a task force looking at protecting health coverage in Louisiana. The group's report shows the state stands to lose $3.6 billion in federal funding if a Texas court rules to overturn the Affordable Care Act. Almost 500,000 people here would lose health coverage. The governor created the task force following efforts to repeal the protections offered to those with pre-existing conditions. Medicaid expansion could also be overturned. Well, the governor today announced an interim Secretary of Health to replace Dr. Rebecca Gee. She resigned earlier this month. Stephen Russo takes over in the interim role. He currently serves as executive counsel for the department. The governor hopes to name a permanent LDH secretary in the coming weeks. Work with Medicaid program is a huge part of the secretary's job, and with all the successes of the past several years, there have been clouds hanging over it. The program has been hailed for its work to ensure almost 500,000 Louisianans who didn't have health insurance before, but it's also been criticized for mismanagement. One instance of that came in November 2018. That's when a state audit claimed the Department of Health spent up to $85 million more than it should have on Medicaid patients who were not eligible. Shortly after that announcement, I asked then Secretary Gee about it.
When the governor and I came in January of 16, one of our top priorities was to change it, to improve it, and to overhaul it. And so since that time, we've been working on that change.
But the report was that people who really were not eligible were getting enrolled. So
the true story is that we were following the plan that we had with the federal government for eligibility and enrollment. In our system and the rules that it followed, we were following perfectly. So there was no money that the feds will take back. There was no one enrolled under our rules that shouldn't have been enrolled, because the way the system worked, it was unable to capture the data sources that the legislative auditor and some of our legislators wanted to include.
That interview was in December of 2018. A new computer system came in and the problems went away. But now it's service contracts worth billions that are under scrutiny. Another state review alleges the bid process to select those contractors was poorly handled and that there should be a do-over. The governor and Dr. Gee defend the selection work as they say they followed the law precisely. I talked with Jan Moeller of the Louisiana Budget Project, the watchdog group that observes and reports on state government spending and how it affects you. Jan, what is the view of your think tank about what's behind this contract selection controversy?
Well, there's a lot of money at stake here. That's $21 billion over 3 years. That's about 1/4 of the overall state budget. And these contracts, this is the health insurance. They're picking health insurance providers for 1.5 million people, low-income people in our state. That's almost 1 out of 3 Louisianans is going to be covered by one of these plans. So if you're on the losing side of this bid process, and there were, I think, 6 bidders that applied and 4 were chosen, the 2 who are on the outside with that much money at stake, I think naturally is going to look through the process and look for any faults they found in the procurement process and try to get back in. So I think everybody on both sides did not expect the initial contract award to be the final word on this, just because, again, it's such a big piece of the overall state budget, so much money, so much business at stake.
It is a big piece, but do you think it's sort of sour grapes from the companies that didn't get the bids?
Well, I haven't looked at the details. I mean, it's business. I mean, I think anybody, you know, the state put the RFP online, and then they put all of the responses to the RFP online. And if anybody has 2 or 3 days of their lives to dedicate this, they can read through all of the responses. So I have no idea whether they have a good case or a bad case, because I haven't dived into it that much.
And you would think that if a company was upset about not getting selected, that wouldn't necessarily trigger a review that, oh, you need to throw this process out and do it over again.
Well, they're going to appeal the ruling. I mean, if you're on the losing side of this, I think it's natural to look through the process and look for something that maybe there was an I that wasn't dotted, or a T that wasn't crossed, or a rule that wasn't followed to the T. So you're going to file an appeal. The state procurement officer has ruled in favor of the appellants, and now the state has appealed that decision. So ultimately right now this is in the hands of Jay Darden, the Commissioner of Administration. He's going to make a decision which side is right, the procurement officer or the Department of Health. But even his decision probably won't be final, because the losing side of that decision then has the option to go to court. So this could end up in the 19th Judicial District Court here in Baton Rouge, potentially could end up getting appealed through the court system. The good news on this, however, is that the existing providers that have these contracts, have had these contracts for years, they got emergency contracts to continue through this year. So anybody who's covered now is going to be covered through the end of the year. Nobody's losing coverage. What may happen once they settle this, whether it gets settled by Jay Darden or settled in court, is that, you know, maybe if your insurance provider that you now have didn't get picked, you might have to pick a different plan. So you want to make sure the plans are strong plans. You want to make sure it's not just a piece of paper, but an insurance plan that can let you see a doctor when you get sick, that gives you a choice of providers, that lets you have the drugs you might need if you need a sick. That, you know, you want to make sure that it's an insurance plan that actually covers what you need and keeps you healthy. And so I think that's what the state needs to be sure. If you're on the business side of this, obviously you want the business, but the state's job, the taxpayers need to make sure that what they're paying for, they're actually paying for good health, good coverage, and that an insurance card isn't just a card, but actually a means to get access to care.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
The president of the Baton Rouge Area Chamber stood before cameras at Monday's Baton Rouge Press Club. Adam Knapp discussed major opportunities and big challenges facing the region and the state in 2020.
We asked the question, why not us and why not now? As this decade begins, it's surprising to note how many important things actually are in flux this calendar year for Baton Rouge and for the state of Louisiana. At the state level, a substantially newly elected Board of Elementary and Secondary Education will name a new state superintendent for the first time since the year 2012, where John White has led admirably and skillfully for the last 7 years. And as badly needed as it is, will the future continue the progress for our children that's been made in recent years. Taken together, the impact on education alone is enough to pause, but when you look at all of 2020, there's even more. 2020 finds us in a year where a new governor is beginning a new term, his last term, and there remains still those serious questions about whether he's going to be able to succeed in a politically divided government to drive change that's needed for our state.
There are results of a new national safety study that are out, and they could further highlight the fully inadequate infrastructure that attempts to move people in, around, and through Baton Rouge. The report puts Louisiana's capital in the top 10 of America's least safe cities to drive, ranking Baton Rouge with the 8th most car crashes. Now look at the other cities in this top 10, all much larger, much greater populations, and these are actual crash numbers, these not per capita. So with those more than 11,000 crashes in the capital city in 2019, that was actually 5.6% decrease from the year before, but it's a lot to see. This month has been one of major events for LSU. The football team swept through the college football playoffs and on January 13th won the national championship. The Tigers joined only a few others as the only teams to ever go 15-0. LSU's president, F. King Alexander, left, and on January 1st, Thomas Galligan assumed the office as interim president. For now, he becomes the chief executive of LSU's 8 campuses and the leader of the flagship campus here in Baton Rouge. Mr. Galligan, it is great to meet you and to have you here. And for those who don't know, explain why the trip to the president's office from your previous office wasn't such a long trip for you on the LSU campus.
Yeah, it really wasn't a long trip at all because the law center, the Paul M. Hebert Law Center, is on East Campus Drive, which is on the perimeter of the campus.
And you were the dean of the law center.
I was the dean of the law center since 2016. So all that stands between us and the University Administration Building is our wonderful lab school. So it was really just, I just had to walk by one building and into the other one. So it was really a very short walk.
Is it something you're looking forward to getting back to?
I was the president of a small college in New England, Colby Sawyer College, for 10 years. They didn't have a law school. Okay. And so I really wanted to get back to LSU and get back to a law school. So my goal is to do a great job as interim president, to make the job as attractive as possible for whoever comes next, and to get back to the Paul M. Hebert Law Center.
Well, the process of searching for a new president, I understand, may have some business beforehand if the Board of Supervisors considers separating the position of President Chancellor back into a two-person positions as they were traditionally at LSU. What is the latest on that? What's the expectation that could happen there?
Yeah, the latest on that, I think, is that the Board of Supervisors has to have conversation about what's the best structure for LSU. And certainly, I've read in the paper, as you've read in the paper, I'm more concerned about the strategy and the day-to-day operation of our wonderful, wonderful LSU than with the process. But they'll have conversation about what structure is best. Should it be one person? Should it be two people? Or maybe it's one person and there's some other structural changes made. After those conversations are had, then the search will begin and the board will do a search for the president of LSU.
Those can be a lengthy process sometimes, typically a national search. But I wonder, the success of Coach O, for example, has that sort of made an impression that there may well be somebody in Louisiana who can do this job very well? And they have LSU ties, they bleed purple and gold, and so let's not overlook that. Not that they would be overlooked, but oftentimes recent precedents have come from elsewhere.
I think that the board, again, will do, I'm sure, will do a comprehensive, and Mary Werner, the board chair, has said a national search, but she's also indicated that a national search may include great people from Louisiana or with Louisiana connections.
There is a campaign that's happening at LSU right now, the Fierce for the Future.
Fierce for the Future.
$1.5 billion, very ambitious campaign.
Yes.
Just recently kicked off. Where does it stand, and what will that do for LSU?
It's in great shape. We have raised to date over $800 million. It's a comprehensive campaign, so it's all of LSU. And if we look at Baton Rouge, it's the foundation, it's the Tiger Athletic Foundation, it's the Alumni Association, it's all of us together. We've raised over $800 million. And I think what that will do is, and I teach torts and I teach admiralty, so forgive the sort of nautical reference, but it will literally help all boats float higher.
Yeah, exactly.
You know that state funding of higher education and state funding of LSU has gone down precipitously. How that happened is but it happened. So we've gone from being 80% state funded and 20% funded by tuition fees and philanthropy to being 20% state funded and 80% funded by tuition fees and philanthropy. So philanthropy, the Fierce for the Future campaign, alumni giving back, friends giving back, is crucial to the success of LSU.
And of course, the future, as the campaign would suggest.
Exactly right.
There have been a lot of great things that have happened on campus,
Yep.
Academically, athletically, certainly.
Yeah.
But there have also been problems, particularly with the Greek system has had some black marks on it. Tragically, the death of a student, and the court cases have just finally wound up with that. What has been done, though, to take a look back and find out how we got there, how some of these things happened?
Yeah, I think, in fact, I know we've done a comprehensive examination of the process by which the Greek system lives. We've targeted anti-hazing measures. That's an ongoing effort. In fact, I just met yesterday with the Vice President of Student Development to talk about the things that we are working on going forward to come up really with a comprehensive strategy and campaign to make all of LSU, including Greek life, a safer place of which we can all be proud.
How long do you think, if you have a guess, that you'll be in this role? And I might ask, would you change your mind and maybe want to remain from interim to permanent president?
Mary Werner, when she came to talk to me about my appetite to be interim president on a Wednesday, and I said, wow, and I need to talk to my wife, Susan, and I said, well, how long would this be? And she said, we're thinking now 6 to 9 months, so I think that's probably the time frame. Mm-hmm. And then I was smart enough to ask her, well, when would it be announced? And she said Friday. So, so it's been a whirlwind, but I think 6 to 9 months is probably the time frame. If it's a little shorter, that's great. If it's a little longer, so we make sure that we get the right structure and the best pool possible, that's fine too. And right now I think, no, I probably wouldn't change my mind. I'm a law school professor.
And you love that.
I want to be a law school professor. I love teaching. So while I'm honored and privileged and excited to be interim president, my goal is to get back to being a law school professor and dean.
It seems though you have stepped right into the role pretty easily, gracefully. You got to do the parade and the celebration for the national champion. So that was one thing that your face was front and center at.
Well, I didn't have much choice.
Of course. Right.
It's been a wonderful start. We had a board meeting my first week. We had the national championship. We had a trip to the White House. We had the celebration. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been propped up by some wonderful people. The staff in the president's office are absolutely fantastic. So they've been teaching me. They've been supporting me. They've been patting me on the back.
Yeah.
So I'm enthusiastic about it. And if you've watched the time that I've gotten to speak at various places, I've certainly praised the national championship, yes. But I've also tried to point out that at LSU we are champions in the classroom, in the lab, on the stage, in the studio, and at my home college, the Law Center, 5 advocacy national championships in the last 2.5 years. So really, let's use this football national championship to really showcase all of the wonderful academic and research things that are going on at LSU.
Right, help shine the light on so many other things that need to be talked about.
Exactly
also.
Right. Andy Holt at the University of Tennessee, where I spent 8 years, used to say athletics is the front porch. And it's the front porch of a wonderful house. And so once you've come on the front porch, now come on in and see all the wonderful stuff inside.
Well, we're happy for the work that you're doing and glad to have you in this position, and all the best as you venture through the state and look over the system that is LSU.
Well, thank you very much, Andre. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of your work, and it's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Galligan first came to LSU as a law professor in 1986, then returned in 2016 as law school dean. Cornell Bluen survived a booby trap in the Vietnam War and a recent battle with cancer, but says he didn't think twice when a smooth-talking salesman came into his home and then sold him a bill of goods.
Cornell Bluen says he got a knock on his door last November that he now wishes he had never answered.
So I said, come on in. He had a name on him, I think. And he said, we are in the process of taking over ADT, and I'd like to put a new control panel in. You know, I see that your contract ends in May.
He says the salesman was very professional and everything seemed legit.
How would he know that my ADT system contract is running out in May and he's pushing another system?
It would be a couple of months later when Mr. Bluen realized the upgrade to his alarm system was not at all as advertised. A scheduled appointment with ADT opened his eyes.
But as soon as he walked in, he was like, it was like a snake coming up in front of him. He went, I gotta leave, Mr. Bluen. I went, why? This is not our system. I mean, he stood right there. He was ready to walk right back out the door. I said, wait, don't leave me like this. This is not your system? No. He said, I'm sorry to tell you, but you got scammed, Mr. Bluen.
What the ADT tech told the 71-year-old Vietnam veteran blew him away. He immediately went to the bank to stop the monthly payments he was being charged.
I went over there and the lady at the bank said, I would too. I would stop it right now. I said, let's do it.
He says the smooth-talking salesman was with the Safe Home Security Company and had talked him into signing a 3-year contract, although he was still under contract with ADT. Officials with ADT confirmed they are not affiliated with Safe Home Security.
And I had both of them on my bill, on my statement. And I'm undecided what I should do.
Mr. Bluen says he feels like he was targeted.
You know it's a scam, at least as far as they weren't buying ADT.
Oh no, like the guy said, if anybody's going to be buying anybody, we would be buying them. Nobody's going to take over us.
The Director of Public Relations for ADT, Bob Tucker, says, and I quote, ADT is not affiliated with Safe Home Security and warns consumers to be aware of any false claims from the company about its relationship with ADT, end quote.
This is not true, what's happening. This is not legitimate. He lied by telling me that they were merging.
The Safe Home Security Company, which is headquartered in Middletown, Connecticut, has received dozens of negative reviews online. And we've learned officials with ADT are investigating more than a dozen complaints in Louisiana about deceptive sales practices from the Safe Home Security Company. Mr. Bluen says he called Safe Home Security trying to get answers and to end their relationship.
I told her that I did not like what happened. You know, I want to get out of this contract. They misrepresented themselves. Said, well, hold on, let me give you the address to write to. So she gave it to me. I wrote. She said, I have to write it out on paper. I wrote on there that I want out of my contract.
Mr. Bluen says Safe Home Security did email him back telling him he was responsible for the contract he signed with their company. He says he still can't believe he was duped.
It hurts. I'm dealing with the effects of cancer from a year ago, and then this happens to me. 2 things in a row I got hit with, and I don't feel good about it.
He now has this warning for others, especially seniors.
Remember that name, Safe Home Securities. Do not let them in your house.
We have learned Safe Home Securities is not licensed in Louisiana, and our calls to them were not returned. Mr. Bluen tells us he was contacted by Safe Home this week, though, to try and resolve the dispute. We'll keep you posted on that. A Houston writer accepted the 13th annual Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence Thursday night in Baton Rouge. Brian Washington was joined by the winners of youth awards at elementary, junior, and high school competitions. Washington has been published in the New York Times, New Yorker, and Paris Review, and now honored for his debut novel, Lot. And with the award comes a $15,000 prize and much gratitude.
I want to say thank you to all of the judges. Everyone in my cohort, I feel like, is just doing such exciting work, so I feel like this would be a really lovely time to be a judge and to be chosen amongst my peers. It's just really an honor, so thank you.
Well, everyone, that's our show for this week. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime, wherever you are, with our brand new app. Download it for free from your app store. This upgraded version features news and public affairs, documentaries, how-tos, and many more programs. And please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For all of us here at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Morrow. Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.